Hello, reporter room investigators. How are you? We have so much stuff to get into. Welcome to Reporter Room. I'm so glad that you guys are here. If you haven't already, please subscribe.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Davies.
Okay, we are getting started. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm so glad that you guys are here with me today. My name is Jessica Davies, and I'm an investigative journalist. My job is to investigate crimes, potential suspects, crime scenes, and evidence. And I'm going to show you guys how to go through all of this yourselves so you can consider suspects, crime scenes, and evidence. So if you haven't subscribed, please do smash that like button, hit the notification bell. I'm going to be streaming the whole Bryan Kohberger trial, and you don't want to miss any important updates. So let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about Exhibit A, Officer Brett Payne, BK's traits. Is he a narcissist? Is he a stalker? And the psychology behind people who support criminals, like the women who write love letters to these criminals in prison. So, why are people so attracted to perpetrators who commit these crimes? And we're also going to discuss that Van's shoe print. Remember that shoe print found just outside Dylan's bedroom? Well, we're going to dig into the affidavit and we're going to be learning a little bit about that. If you don't know who Officer Brett Payne is, we're going to share a lot of information on that as well. Let me just say hello to the chat. Thank you to all of our subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. George is here. I think we may find that he searched for info on before the public was even aware of the crime. He was probably looking for info later that morning before driving back to Moscow. Very interesting, George. Hello, Amelia. If you don't know, Amelia's our head mod. She's fantastic. Thank you to our mods. Thank you to our subscribers and to all of our channel members. You'll see channel members, they're the ones with the blue check marks in the top chat, like Holly. Hi, Holly. Lynette's here. Amanda Lee is here. Hi. Thank you. Yeah, please give me the thumbs up. It helps me out. Tara is here. Mike is here. Oh, we're going to have a good chat today. I can tell we've got some really good people. Jan is here. And Jewel is here. All right. Thank you. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up. Let's go ahead and get started. You guys know I like to get started right away. And let me grab this one. Okay, so we're going to start today by talking about Dylan and her encounter with the perpetrator. Did he threaten her? No. So there's been a lot of questions as to why she didn't call the police earlier. And so why was there no 911 call for 8 hours? Why were there other people called to the house before the police? Why was the 911 call made from one of the witnesses' phone, not from one of the witnesses' phones, but by someone else? But it was using the witness's phone. Who was the unconscious individual referenced in the call? And why isn't law enforcement releasing that 911 call to us? Let's go through each thing. So there was no 911 call for the first 8 hours of this after Dylan reportedly saw someone in a wearing all black, who was slim, athletic, but not muscular, with bushy eyebrows, wearing a mask. And we're going to talk about that Van's shoe print, that latent print, and Officer Brett Payne in just a few minutes. So please stay with me. So we don't know exactly why there was no 911 call for 8 hours, but what I suspect happened is that she was startled. She was in the, a frozen shock phase. She just froze for a second. It was just startled that somebody came by, and then was probably annoyed that there was a man in the house. She did have, there were 5, young women living in the house, so it probably wasn't that unusual to see a man coming or going. She may have been annoyed. She had been awoken a couple of times. So she closed the door and she locked it and just, was maybe just frustrated, being disturbed in the night. It probably wasn't the first time she was awakened in that house at night with somebody coming or going. That's my theory. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Why were there other people called to the house before the police? Okay, so let's take that one next. This is a um, was misreported at the beginning. It's since been clarified that what happened was one of Ethan's friends came over to the house. He probably wasn't answering his phone. We all know why. Came over to the house to check and see where Ethan was. Maybe they had plans that day. When he got to the house, he saw the crime scene, alerted the roommates, one of the roommates, and she passed out, which is why we have this unconscious individual referenced in the 911 call. And he made the call that he had somebody who had just passed out and called in the crime scene. So, and I suspect that he would have used her phone when he did it. Maybe she came out holding the phone. Maybe he didn't have had left his phone in the car. But that's what I think is the answer to that. Why isn't law enforcement releasing that 911 call? Well, I think that I think that they didn't release the call because it's evidence. It's evidence. So I do think we're going to hear about that 911 call, and we're going to hear from Dylan and Bethany during this. So let's talk about the other roommate, that's Bethany, for a second. There's been a lot of speculations. A lot of shade has been thrown at the roommates, and I think that it's not right. The same people who are saying, Bryan Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty, and he is. He's innocent until proven guilty, but he is the only person who's been arrested. He's the only person who's sitting in jail, and he's the only person who's been indicted by a grand jury. So we're going to talk about this case in terms of Bryan Kohberger, and I know that people who are, in the comment section, the same people telling me that he's innocent until proven guilty are also demanding that roommates be arrested. Come on, guys. If we're going to have grace for the one who's arrested and jailed and indicted, then we have to have grace for the roommates. From what I can tell, their only crime, in my opinion, is that they simply survived. And I think it's so, why have the roommates been so silent? Well, there's a gag order in place. So I think it's really sad that they're, um, not out there able to make statements on their behalf, but I also think it's classy that they're not doing that. So let's talk about the evidence against BK. We already know about the DNA from the knife sheath, the information about his cars and the phone locations. Some people think it's feeble. We'll see. I think it's going to be a circumstantial case. I think they're going to be building everything bit by bit. There's been a lot of people that have, talked about BK. There's no DNA evidence. How could that be? They must have the wrong person. And, maybe they're right. I don't think that they are. I think that he probably dextered out his car. That's just my opinion. And that's how he got away with it. Let me catch up with the chat for a second. And I'm going to grab the next screen. Let me grab the next one. I have multiple packages I'm sharing with you guys because we're going to be talking about Officer Brett Payne, and we're also going to be talking about the affidavit and that van's shoe print. So let me grab the affidavit. Okay. But let me catch up with chat for a second, make sure I'm not getting too behind. See if you guys have any questions or comments. This is a great live stream to get to do that. Tara says, I really want to know more about this 911 call. It's never made sense to me. Well, I hope I explained it um, well enough where you can understand. Um, that well, we don't know. Then Jewel says there's no mention of this particular thing in the 911 call. We don't know that, Jewel, because we have not heard the 911 call, so we don't know what was said. Nobody's heard it. So everybody's just can attribute anything to the 911 call, but we have not heard the 911 call. I suspect we will hear it during the trial. Mike says, exactly, it's not said people were called over. Right. Nobody has said that. I don't think that I know there have been, a lot of things attributed to the roommates. They called over all their friends to come over. That's not what happened. Ethan's friend came over looking for him because he wasn't answering the phone. They probably had plans that day and he probably just wanted to know where his friend was, probably knocked on the door, and maybe one of the roommates came out and went upstairs with them to see where Ethan was. Maybe Bethany answered the door and passed out when she got up there. And I've heard the crime scene was so bad that people, that the law enforcement had PTSD from this crime scene. Catherine says, hello, everyone. My understanding is that a friend of Ethan Chapin's came over looking for him when he didn't show up for something elsewhere. He found Ethan, Xana, and called 911 on Dylan Mortenson's phone. Thanks for sharing that, Catherine. I don't know whose phone he used, but I do think it's really interesting. Mike says, right. And Mike says, it's part of the report that's not available yet. After the trial, the judge may seal it. Who knows? If you want to join me, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I have all my socials linked. Please hit the like button. Yeah, I need help with the algorithm, guys. I do. Catherine says the survivors are key. They know more than what was released. Yes, I agree. The survivors are key. They are the witnesses in this case, and they do know more than one was released. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't subscribed to Reporter Room, please do like, share, and leave me a comment. If you want to join the top chat, you just need to be subscribed for a few minutes. By the time you write out your comment, your minutes will be up. See through. Fest is here. Hello. Jewel says, I will be interested to see if they put BK on the stand. I will be, yeah, that would be great. I would love to see that. Alex Murdaugh got on the stand. So who knows? Mike doesn't think he will. I think he'll probably follow the advice of his attorney. Mandalise says, I agree. I won't be shocked to find out his car was very well prepared to do that. She's talking about the dextering out of the car. And Margaret's here. Yeah, tell me where you're from, guys. Let's see. Catherine thinks that BK would be a fool to testify. He has no alibi. Well, we saw Alex Murdaugh get up on the stand, so you never know, guys. You never know. I am planning to live stream the trial. Hey, Nevada. Good to see you. And Mandalee points out that he won't even talk to the judge except to just make his plea. I don't even think he did the plea, right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, he didn't even do the plea. He let his attorney put it in. Tara says, Jessica, I went to find you the other day. Everything was private on your other accounts. I don't know what you're talking about, Tara. I'm not private on any of my accounts. Everything is me, and I'm there. Welcome, See Through Fest. Just became a channel member. Yeah, please become a channel member. We have our own private live streams. We have interaction. Jody is here. If you see the check marks, that you see, those are channel members. Holly is here. Hi, Holly. Leslie says she's from Columbia River, Oregon. Sounds very pretty. The Joel is from Australia. Deb is from Asheville. Hey, Sandra, good to see you. So you just need to be subscribed to be in the top chat for 1 minute. So please give this video a thumbs up. Help me out with the YouTube algorithm. We have so much stuff to dig into. Let's go ahead and get started on this. We're going to be going through the affidavit. If you're just joining me, I see quite a few people just coming in. We're going to be going through the affidavit. We're going to be talking about the roommates. We're going to be talking about gaslighting and narcissism. We're going to be talking about stalking. We're going to be talking about that van shoe print. But let's start out talking about the affidavit. So Brett Payne, he was the police officer. There's been a lot of brouhaha about him. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you guys. Can you guys see that? Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. So Brett Payne, he was duly appointed, qualified, acting as a peace officer within the county of Latah in the state of Idaho. He was employed by the Moscow Police Department. He has been a qualified police officer for approximately 4 years. Now, it doesn't say he's been with the Moscow PD. There's been a lot of brouhaha that he wasn't with Moscow PD for 4 years, and that's true. He's joined them in April of 2020, so he was newer to there. But you got to think from the point of view of the Moscow Police Department. They hadn't had anything like this happen. There had been no doing away with anyone. I'm watching my words here. No doing away with anyone in 8 years leading up to what happened on November 13th of 2022 at 1122 King Road House. So they would not, have needed, FBI level people. Um, they were mostly probably handling, uh, disorderly complaints, inebriation, that kind of thing, people under the influence, party calls, noise complaints, stuff like that is probably more what they were dealing with leading up to this. Now, I do want to credit the Moscow PD because they did what we did not see in the Jean-Benet Ramsey case. The Jean-Benet Ramsey case, the Boulder PD tried to handle it by themselves. The Moscow PD did not do that. They immediately brought in the state police from Idaho with all of their experience, and they immediately brought in the FBI. And my understanding is the FBI came in with around 30 people to help investigate this case. So I do want to just say that I think, it's good. So let's go through the affidavit a little bit, talk about what we know and some stuff that we don't know. And I'm going to be talking about that Van's shoe print and Dylan in just a few minutes. So please stay with me. So Officer Payne wrote that when he and Sergeant Blaker arrived at the home, that they, came onto the crime scene. They started on the first floor. So that would have been where Bethany was sleeping, right? And then they went upstairs to the second floor where they went into the west bedroom. Now, the west bedroom, for those of you that don't know, that's Xana Kernodle's room. That's where she and Ethan were sleeping. As Payne approached the room, he could see Xana and Ethan, that they were both, and they're saying, according to this, that they were in the room. Now, the affidavit says that Kernodle, I'm going to watch my words here, wounds that appeared to have been caused by a edged weapon. We now know it was a K-bar knife based on the sheath that was found to the side and underneath of Maddie. And Ethan was also found with wounds later to be determined as sharp force injuries. After this, Officer Payne and Smith both went up to the third floor where they entered Maddie Mogan's room. You've seen the photos of the outside of her room. Her room was the one with the letter M in the window and the little pink boots. And Payne wrote that he could see two females. We know that's Maddie and Kaylee, and the affidavit says that they both had visible stab wounds. On the bed next to Maddie, right side when viewed from the door, Officer Payne wrote that he later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath, and the sheath was processed, and the Idaho State Lab found one and only one single source of male DNA on the button snap of the knife sheath. No other people's DNA, male or female, was found on that knife sheath, and that ended up being an octillion match to Bryan Kohberger. So let's talk about the roommates. The two surviving roommates, we already know that it's Dylan and Bethany. Their names are out there. Were interviewed by the police. I heard it was a very rough interview. I heard it was a very aggressive, more like an interrogation type of interview. And and they were ultimately ruled out. Dylan said that she went to sleep in her bedroom on the second floor and she was woken up around 4 a.m. by what she said sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog Murphy upstairs. She said she looked out her bedroom, didn't see anything after she thought she heard Kaylee saying something like, quote, "There's someone here." We know that Xana's phone showed that she was watching TikTok videos until 4:12 a.m. I don't know if that's correct or not. She could have just had TikTok running in the background and just put her phone down and whatever was playing was playing. And TikTok will just keep showing you videos till you click out. We know that DM opened her door a second time. She thought she heard crying coming from Xana's room, and she heard a male's voice saying, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." This is according to the affidavit. So if this is true, if he said that, if the perpetrator said that while he was going in to do what he did, that's really diabolical. That's just a whole new level of evil, in my opinion, that he would go in and say that. We know there's multiple security camera footages, but we really only know about the one of the neighboring home that was less than 50 feet away from Xana's room, picked up a distorted audio of voices or a whimper followed by a loud thud, and a dog can be heard barking. I don't know if this is Murphy or just another dog in the neighborhood that was alerting at 4:17 a.m. The affidavit said DM opened her door a third time after she heard crying. She saw a person in black clothing and a mask that covered the nose and mouth walking toward her. She described the person as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. And I bet you BK is going to be keeping those eyebrows trimmed. They're already trimmed down, but the person walked by her as she stood in frozen shock face. So I think she's startled. She didn't expect to see someone. And then she saw them walk toward the back sliding glass door, leaving the home. So I'm assuming that's on the second floor. That's where Dylan's room was. She lived right there off of the kitchen and living room. And then there's camera footage showing a white sedan believed to be BK's vehicle, that Hyundai Elantra, traveling west on Indian Hills Drive in Moscow around 3:36 a.m. west on Steiner Avenue on Idaho Highway 95 in Moscow around 3:38 p.m. Initially, they believed it to be a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, but they later reviewed the footage again and it indicated it could be a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. And in this video, the police say it appeared the vehicle did not have a front license plate. So this would be, again, starting to narrow down whose vehicle it could possibly be. Let me catch up with chat for a second. I have multiple packages that we're going to be going through, including a video that I'm going to show you in just a few moments. We're going to be talking about the Van Nuys shoes. We're going to be talking about Officer Brett Payne's. We're going to be talking about narcissism and stalking. We have a lot of topics to get into, and I have 5 more packages after this one to share with you. So please stay with me. Let me catch up with chat and just see if you guys want to join the Chop Chat. Just subscribe, and you'll just need to log on to some kind of device that allows you to see the chat. Let me back it up a little bit. I am really behind. Let's see what you guys are saying. Let's see. Connie says, there was someone who stated that they are taught in school in case of an intruder to hide, lock the door, be quiet, including the phone, stay hidden until police arrive. That's really good advice. And I don't think she thought this is just my opinion, but I don't think Dylan thought it was an intruder. Let me know what you think. If you think something different, by all means, let me know. I think she thought it was a strange man. I don't think she thought it was like an intruder, like someone who wasn't supposed to be there. I just think she was startled. There's a strange man in the house. I don't know who it is. And, she was only 19 years old. She was the youngest roommate. So the newest roommate. So she locked the door. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Catherine says, I've always been worried about Officer Brett Payne, but I know law enforcement has been anticipating this, so they're prepared for it all. Yes, and we're going to be talking more about Officer Brett Payne in just a second. Olwen says, hello. Hey, Olwen. If you guys see people in the chat with a check mark, those are our channel members. If you would like to become a channel member, just join. We have our own live streams. Global crime community. Thanks for that. And if you don't know, Amelia's our head mod. She's awesome. Thank you to our mods, channel members, and subscribers. We got people saying hello. Let's see if I can get to some comments. See Through Fast says, I'm not saying that I think they did. I'm just saying that the rumors are out there. And if it ends up being true, boy, a lot of people are going to be in shock. Catherine says, I heard it was East 60 to help search for the car. And C3 says, do you think it's possible that that this was done by one person? Yes. Oh my gosh. And if you want to see a really good video after this live stream is over, go over to Gray Hughes, tell him Reporter Room sent you, and go look at his video. He literally has a video where he runs the clock and proves that there was plenty of time for one person to commit all of these crimes with a K-bar knife. So I think it's definitely worth watching. I was riveted. Leslie says, I don't think it was just one person. I think he had help. Fair enough. Tara says, there's so much we're not hearing yet. If one of them tried to escape, why? We don't know. I think the perpetrator practiced. That's my opinion. And if you're using a K-bar knife, there would be a lot of ways to use this to keep somebody from making any noise. And we don't know anything about where the impacts were made. If you think about the diaphragm, the lungs, this area, that would all, and I do believe the perpetrator practiced. Mandalee says, I do believe that something BK did alone. However, I believe somehow Brent Kopacka was involved. There's a lot that points to those two knowing each other. I looked into Brent Kopacka. I made a video about it because I also wondered, because they both were employed at WSU. Let me grab a sip of water. But I couldn't find anything credible to link Brent Kopacka other than the fact that they both worked at WSU to link him to the crime. That's a great question. And I wish, I had been able to find a link. I would have made a video if I had, but I haven't. I think so I haven't found any connections. But I'll keep looking. Denise says, I really feel like he was alone. What are the chances that two psychopaths are friends? I think that's really good. Amelia says, wasn't there a sound recording? Yes, one of the neighbors did pick up sound on their audio cam, their doorbell cam. So, or their outside camera did pick up sound, but we that's all we know of. There was a recording that went around, Amelia, that purported to be the victims. It turned out to be a hoax. It was created by a YouTuber. I'm not going to mention who it was, but it was a hoax. And I can't believe this was somebody with over 100,000 subscribers that I cannot believe would fabricate something and bring that to the audience, because I think if you respect your viewers, you wouldn't fabricate something. You wouldn't make up stuff. So, but he did. I have not seen him covering this case still to this day. I haven't seen him back on the case again. He has no credibility now. Leslie says, if he was alone, how did he do so much damage without being seen? Well, he was seen. He was seen by Bethany. Mike says, yes, very evil. I almost think he injured Xana, then Ethan, and then got back to Xana saying he was going to help her. I think he was saying he was going to. Yeah, exactly. I think that if he did say that, it's diabolical. Olwen says, but she didn't ring for more than 8 hours. No, she didn't. This is true. And this has bothered a lot of people that Dylan didn't call 911, but she didn't call 911. If you're just joining me, as I explained at the beginning of the live stream, and I know it takes time for people to get in here, so I'll just repeat it really quickly. Um, she didn't call 911. One of Ethan's friends, Ethan Chapin's friends, came over to the house looking for him. And he is the one that called 911. And this is why we get the report of someone being unconscious. I suspect that one of the roommates probably passed out, or maybe whoever this guy, Ethan's friend, was with passed out when they saw the crime scene. Oh, that's okay, Mindali. And Jess says he was consumed with anger and rage. Lynette says, also, if he had said that she had heard him say it, more reason to call for help, or at least call Maddie or Kaylee to make sure they were okay. Doesn't make sense. Well, maybe she thought it was Ethan and that, Xana and Ethan were having a disagreement. We're going to have to let her speak for herself. But what I'm like, advocating for, and a lot of you guys are too, is just giving the roommates grace. They have been stuck under the gag order. We had the affidavit come out, right? And it said she was in frozen shock phase and she saw the man, and then all of a sudden, boom, this gag order is put in place. And I credit the roommates that they didn't come out and do paid interviews. They would get paid a lot of money. They've been very classy about it, in my opinion. They haven't done any paid interviews. They haven't done anything that would jeopardize the case. And I think that if there was any animosity toward the roommates, it would have come from Steve and Christy Gonzalez. But instead, Christy and Steve Gonzalez have asked the public to be compassionate toward the roommates. So Mike says, I think he was alone for sure. He even admitted he was driving alone. Yes, I believe law enforcement has images of him in that car. I do. I think we'll see it at the trial. If she fell asleep, 8 hours is not abnormal. Yeah. If you had a few drinks, you looked out, you were like startled to see someone, and then you closed the door and locked it, then from that time to when Ethan's friend came over would have been around 8 hours. So they would have been sleeping. They were young kids. They were having fun. Not that night, but, you know. Jewel says, what I cannot understand is she could hear those things thumping, shuffling of furniture, but nothing. The others were playing with a dog and someone talking. Well, she thought that's what she thought it was. She did hear little noises, but she just thought it was Kaylee playing with Murphy. She probably heard similar noises like that before. Maybe that night was particularly, noisy. That's why she closed and locked her door. Maybe she was aggravated. You know, I don't know. But I do think it's good she didn't come out of her room, because had she done that, she wouldn't be here. Leslie says, yes, you're right. I didn't think about the rage. Thanks for clearing that up. Amelia says, that chef guy who did the tasteless video straight after the crime was a good candidate for being a suspect. Yeah, Chef Dizzy, I think. Yeah, and his name was Enan Harsh. And yeah, I think he wanted to get his 15 minutes of fame. And I think, a lot of people did suspect him initially, and maybe that's why he got off YouTube. I think before someone was indicted, we were all looking through everybody who was injecting themselves into that case, right? Because that's what a lot of these perpetrators do. We know Dennis Rader was writing to police officers, taunting them about the crime. So Mike says, Olwen, she never called. Ethan's friend called using her phone. No need. Oh, well, okay. Yeah, but he just came into the chat. So it's okay. And all opinions are welcome. Just be respectful. We don't have to agree. Do we? That's a question I have for you guys. Do we all have to agree on this? Do you have to agree with everybody else's to be part of their YouTube channel? Do you have to completely agree with that person's point of view, or can you have your own opinions and still watch? Because I can read your comments and not agree with your comments, as long as they're presented respectfully. I don't, I'm like, I learn from reading your comments. Your comments are great. You give great perspectives and introspectives uh, on things that maybe I didn't think of, or a point of view that I hadn't occurred to, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I should look into that." I do think that, let's, can we just not agree, and can that be okay? I think it can be. I don't have to agree with every YouTuber that I'm subscribed to. Um, I look for people who are bringing me information that will help. Paradox says, I think Speak Tate was going to abduct his target that night. See, this is something I've never seen brought up by anybody. It's a very interesting theory. Was he? I don't know. I do think he had more planned than what we know. I do think he had more planned. So, was he going to I do believe there was going to be an essay portion to this. But let's get back to this because I want to get through the affidavit, and we're gonna talk about that Van's shoe print. We're gonna talk about Officer Brett Payne's, and we're gonna be talking about um some forensic psychiatry also, but let's continue on with the affidavit because I think this is really important. So, a review of, and then we'll go back to chat. Please put your comments in there. A review of more footage from multiple videos showed several sightings of the Elantra starting at 3:29 a.m. and ending at 4:20 a.m. The vehicle showed that the video showed that the vehicle made three initial passes. We know that it circled the house three times. And then entering the area a fourth time, it did kind of a three-point look like a little bit of a three-point turn there, and then ultimately parked around 4:04 AM. So they know what time that car parked. And then the Elantra is seen leaving the area of the King Road residence at 4:20 AM at a high rate of speed. This is according to the affidavit. So, how did they narrow this down to Bryan Kohberger? Well, let's look at this. So, investigators were given video footage of the Washington State University campus in Pullman, Washington. So you got to think that the campus police were were considering the fact that this could have come from their university. It wasn't necessarily someone from the University of Idaho. And a review of the video footage, remember, law enforcement saw this vehicle going back toward Pullman, Washington. So they put Pullman university campus police, they provided them with footage, what they had. So a review of that video showed that around 2:44 a.m., a vehicle similar to that Hyundai Elantra was seen traveling north, so going toward the crime scene. Around 10 minutes later, it was seen traveling toward SR 270, which connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. They're just about 15 minutes away from each other. The forensic examiner later identified that vehicle seen in Pullman as being a 2014 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. So it took them a little bit of time with the images to be able to get the year exact. So get this. At 5:25 a.m., a description of the vehicle consistent with the Hyundai Elantra was seen on not one, not two, not three, not four, but five cameras. This is why I think Ann Taylor had to put him in the car. She had to put BK in the car because that vehicle was seen on five cameras in Pullman and WSU campus cameras, according to the affidavit. What are the chances that they either have the license tag of that vehicle on one of those cameras or actually footage of him driving in that car? So if he is driving alone in that car, will we finally be able to put to rest the idea that someone helped him? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Would that settle it for you if they have video footage of him driving alone in that car? I suspect there's something like that out there, which is why Ann Taylor put him as his alibi as driving around. So we all remember this on November 25th of 2022. The Moscow police asked local law enforcement to be on the lookout for white Hyundai Elantras. So you got to think this case was national by this point. I was on this case. Everybody was on this case. WSU police officer Daniel Tiengo looked at white Hyundai Elantras registered at WSU. Now, remember, they know this car doesn't have a front license plate, and they know that it's a male DNA at this point. So they're looking for a male driving a white Hyundai Elantra, 2000. Now they've narrowed it down to 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there, and they know it doesn't have a front license plate. He found a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate, so it did not have a front tag, and it was registered to Bryan Kohberger. So that is how law enforcement started to narrow down to Bryan Kohberger, and that was, a lot of credit to the WSU campus police. Let me catch up with chat, and then we're going to continue on with this affidavit. But I want to get some questions in here because you guys have excellent comments. You guys are really, really smart. Leslie says, if he's not guilty, why hasn't he been willing to talk? Well, I mean, his attorney's probably advising him not to talk. I think it's weird. The thing that bothers me a little bit, Leslie, is that he could have exonerated himself by providing the DNA, right? They had the DNA from the knife sheath and they had matched it to his dad using the genealogy DNA, but they wanted to get DNA from Bryan Kohberger. They wanted to match it and he refused. They had to get a court order to get a cheek swab to get his DNA. So that's what they did. So I think it's interesting. At 9 years old, you would still know how to alert someone. Yes, you would. And Mandalay says, I think she was intoxicated, taken by surprise, laid back down, not wanting to overreact. Fell asleep. Yeah, and maybe she took, she could have taken an Ambien that night. I mean, she could have had earplugs in. She could have been watching something on TV. I mean, I don't know. I think let's give her grace and see what she says when she testifies. And then if you guys don't like it, we can talk about it some more. And I know we're going to because I'm airing the trial. Upside down head mod from the Antipods. I really think he was there for Maddie. I think he went there to kidnap her or essay her. The rest were collateral damage, no disrespect. I think Maddie, I also am leaning toward Maddie as the target, but I'm not going to completely rule out Kaylee. I was ruling her out because I thought, well, he wouldn't have known she was home. But then I found out that photograph where we have Maddie sitting on Kaylee's shoulders and Ethan with his arm around Xana and Bethany and Dylan in the shot at the house, that was posted by Kaylee on her Instagram at around 8 p.m. on November the 12th in the hours leading up to what happened. So maybe he knew Kaylee was there and that's why he went. I don't know. I'm leaning toward Maddie also, though, Denise. But I don't know for sure. Paradox is I also believe it's possible that his target could have been Xana, and I think it's awful strange if true that Ethan got into it at a fight that night and Xana's dad changed her door locks. Yeah, Paradox is right. Xana's dad, remember the early reporting in this case? If you don't remember, let me just refresh you. Early reporting in this case said that Xana's dad had changed the door locks just a few days before this happened on her door because why? Did she think someone had been in her room? Had someone been in her room? And Kaylee reported to her dad she thought she had a stalker. So I don't know, you guys. I don't know. Tara says, I just realized my new phone didn't pull over my membership. I'm going to go fix it. Oh, okay. That's fine. Mike says, if you know what happened, which she didn't know, she was woken up to a ruckus. And Owen says, yep, that's right. Hey, Honey Bunny. Honey Bunny says he might have practiced on that dog that was found. Yes, little Buddy, the dog, was found on October 21st. And this is significant because on October 21st, BK got an email that would have enraged him, in my opinion. He got an email that he was failing to meet the standards of the faculty. He was failing to meet the standards of the faculty. Let's continue to go through the affidavit, though, together. For those of you that are just joining me, we're going through the affidavit. We're also going to be talking about that Vans shoe print in a few minutes, and we're going to be talking about Officer Brett Payne. So please stay with me. After this, I have 5 other packages to review with you. We have so much to get into. Okay, so the same day, just before 1 p.m., WSU officer Curtis Whitman was looking for a white Hyundai Elantra and found that 2015 white Hyundai Elantra in a parking lot at the apartment complexes that houses the WSU students. He also ran the car. It returned to BK with a tag. So, WSU police officers are narrowing in on BK. Now let's go to that traffic stop. There was 2 traffic stops with BK and his dad. But this is going back to an earlier traffic stop where BK got pulled over by a police officer. I guess he pulled his car into a crosswalk. So during the traffic stop in Moscow on August 22nd of 2022, BK gave police a phone number ending in 8458 as his cell phone number. Police obtained search warrants to determine the cellular devices that used towers in proximity to the 1122 King Road house, and they did not show that 8458 number being in use between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. on November 13th, the day that the crimes were occurring. So it appears that the phone had pinged right in the area 12 times leading up to it. They had the phone pinging as he was heading in and the phone pinging as he was going away. But during the time that the crime was committed, that phone was either put into airplane mode or turned off. Again, in and of itself, it doesn't mean a whole lot, but I believe this is going to be a circumstantial case. It will be one more piece of the puzzle. So Officer Brett Payne wrote that based on his training, people can leave their cell phones at different locations or turn them off to avoid alerting police to a phone that was associated with them in the area where a crime was committed. Officer Payne said he got a search warrant for the historical phone records between November 12th and 14th for this 8458 number. He found that the phone was using cellular resources at the Pullman apartment that belonged to Bryan Kohberger. And they started trying to see, well, where has this phone gone? At 2:47 a.m., this is on November 13th, the number stops reporting to the network consistent with the phone being in the area without coverage. The connection was disabled. The phone was put in airplane mode, or the phone was switched off. This is according to the affidavit. For those of you that just joined me, we're going through the affidavit. And then we're going to be talking about that van's shoe print and Dylan. And we're going to be talking about Officer Brett Payne in just a moment. So please stay with me. So I think it's interesting. On December 27th, Pennsylvania agents. So now we're going from Pullman. We've gone from Moscow, Idaho, to Pullman, Washington. Now we're going to Pennsylvania agents in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. December 27th, they're staking out the house, right? They recovered from the trash from the Kohberger family home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. They got trash. They were trying to match up this DNA that they found on this knife sheath underneath and to the side of Maddie to who they believed may have done it. The evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing, and a day later, the lab reported a DNA profile obtained from the trash, and the DNA profile from the knife sheath identified a man as, quote, not being excluded as the biological father of the suspect. So it was either a father or a grandfather that this DNA matched. Remember, they didn't get BK's DNA from the trash. Why? Because he was wearing medical gloves inside the house. He was also sorting out his own trash from his parents' trash, and officers watched him take his trash and walk it down to neighbors' trash bins and place it into their trash bins. People have told me that this is recycling. I don't think you have to sort your own personal trash from your parents' trash is recycling. But this is the DNA that Ann Taylor wants to argue. What she doesn't want to argue in court is that cheek swab that BK refused to give them, that they had to go to a judge. Law enforcement had to go to a judge, get a court order to get a DNA cheek swab, and they matched that cheek swab to the DNA. That's the evidence that the prosecution is going to present in court. But look for Ann Tiller to try to spin the narrative about this genealogy DNA, that she wants to talk about the trash DNA, of course, because that's more helpful to her client than that cheek swab. And then BK made his first appearance in court at 10:30 a.m. We have all seen that footage on January 5th of 2023, and he was extradited back to Idaho on January 4th and said he would be exonerated. That's what they said. All right, so let me grab this next package. Oop. And we're going to talk some more about this affidavit. Make sure you guys can see that. Yeah, okay. So let me catch up with the chat really quick, and you guys have such good comments. I don't want to miss any. I'm like getting a little bit behind. Mandalee says, I'm pretty sure they are linked in other ways. I'll look again. Thanks, Mandalee. And Catherine saying Gray Hughes has multiple videos. Explain the entry of the crimes. Please look at his Linda Lane footage. Tell him Reporter Room sent you. Don't leave right now, but after this is done, please go check out his channel. He shows you how the crime could have been committed in that amount of time. He proves it. Very, very helpful stuff. Amelia says so much about his behavior was bizarre, and his occupation and location of his flat in relation to the crime. Yes, his apartment was just 10-15 minutes away. Mike says there's nothing to suggest they were friends. And we were talking about Brent Kopacka and Bryan Kohberger. There's nothing to suggest they were friends. No one even knew about Brent until BK's dad mentioned it. Yeah, how Brent got dragged into this, in my opinion. And if anything new comes up, because I've already investigated this and put out videos on it, which you can check out. But if anything new comes up, I will reinvestigate it. But the only links I've been able to find between Brett and Bryan Kohberger is that they both worked at Washington State University. Bryan was a teaching assistant in the criminology department. Brent was a IT, and Bryan's dad, BK's dad, mentioned Brett and what happened. I'm watching my words. In that infamous traffic stop when law enforcement pulled BK over to try to get images of his hands, wrists, and face. They were trying to see if he had any cuts or bruises. They wanted to capture those on camera. Alwyn, I'm going to watch my words. Do I think I don't know. It's so hard to answer, and that's such a good question, but it's so hard to answer. Because I don't know what the evidence is going to show. I mean, Casey Anthony, I thought that, that was going to be a no-brainer, and she ended up being found not guilty. So, Honey Bunny thinks that the roommates were hung over and slept in. Mike says, yes, the phone was passed around because everyone was hysterical. Yeah, I'm wondering about that 911 call. We have never heard it. There's so much we don't know. We're not 100% certain of the order of what happened. We think it was Maddie. We know she was on the outside of the bed. No, yeah, and Kaylee was trapped on the inside. So we think it was Maddie, Kaylee, and then Ethan, Xana were after. But we could get to the trial and find out it could all just be turned on its head. It doesn't make sense. How can they all be passed out? Just one roommate could have been passed out, or maybe Ethan's friend came over with one of another buddy was with him, or woman, and somebody passed out. Nobody said they all passed out. I think what you're thinking about is people that were asleep in the house, Bethany and Dylan, that maybe they just went to sleep and slept for 8 hours, but I'm not really sure I probably missed something in the chat. If I did, I'm sorry, Olwen. I'm trying. All right, let me do a few more from chat, and I want to get back to the affidavit because we have so much stuff to dig into tonight. We're doing the affidavit, talking about Officer Brett Payne, talking about that van's shoe print. We have so much stuff to get into. Mike says not everyone was passed out. It could have been standard dispatch wording when the call is not cleared. Yeah, my understanding was just one person was, quote, unconscious was the word that was used. The Jewel says, I think BK was very capable of living out his sick fantasy by himself. He hated women, so the anger was always there, apparently, toward the female race. Jody says, hello. Mama Bears, remind you guys to hit the thumbs up. Yeah, please do. It helps me out so much with the algorithm here on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to Reporter Room, please do. And join me in the top chat. Hey, and Jazz, good to see you. Mike says the Jewel, right? I think he passed Dylan because he wasn't expecting the last two and he was anxious to escape. Yeah, and I think that maybe the visual snow protected her too. The fact that she froze, it was dark. And remember, visual snow and night vision impairment go together. So is this also maybe why that knife sheath got left behind? I don't know. Let's go back to the affidavit, though, because we have a lot of stuff to dig into. So, according to the affidavit, authorities are accusing BK of stalking the students' homes multiple times leading up to what happened on November 13th in the wee hours of the morning. It says that authorities believe a surviving roommate, we know that to be Dylan, saw the person who did this, watching my words, and it details how authorities say BK was caught by a web of video and cell phone evidence, as well as DNA from his father that was compared to DNA left on the knife sheath. And as I shared with you a minute ago, they also got a cheek swab from BK once he was arrested, and they got a DNA match in the octillions to that cheek swab. The affidavit details the accusations of the state of Idaho against BK. Authorities have to prove them beyond a reasonable doubt in order to gain a conviction. Now, a reasonable doubt doesn't mean any doubt at all, right? It just means a reasonable person. So, Officer Brett Payne's, was the Moscow Police Department. We're going to talk more about him in just a minute. He responded to the 11 King Road residents to assist with crime scene security and processing the crime scene. It's being brought up that he did not have a lot of years on the Moscow PD. He was hired, it is my understanding, early in 2022. So he'd been there around 2 years at the time that, or early of 2020, my bad. And, he had been there around 2 years, but immediately they brought in the Idaho State Police and the FBI was brought in, and they brought in over 30 agents. So the Moscow PD probably knew that this was like, you know, a lot, and they wanted more experienced police officers to get, and FBI agents, and so they picked up the phone. Imagine if the Boulder PD had done that in the John Benet Ramsey case. We would not we would probably know what happened. I'm just saying. So they entered the house through the bottom floor door, that front door. Now, was it open or not? We don't know. Remember early reports that came out and told us that that door was open? And there have also now, we've heard reports that BK's phone was pinging in the area around 9 a.m. that morning. Did he try to go back for that knife sheath? Did he go back in? Is that when this van's shoe print was left? We're going to talk about that shoe print in just a second. So they entered the home through the bottom floor door. That's the first floor. The affidavit says that Officer Payne went down the hall to the west bedroom and was in Xana's room. Just before this room, there was a bathroom door to the south wall of the hallway, the affidavit has said. So this is where he sees Xana. So it sounds like he saw her first, according to the affidavit. And then Ethan was in the room with sharp force injuries. So In the 3rd floor of the residence, there were 2 bedrooms and 1 bathrooms. We know that one of the bedrooms belonged to Kaylee, who was in the process of moving out. She had taken a job out of state, and the other belonged to Maddie, and Maddie's room had her pink boots in the window and an letter M in her window. The girls were found in Maddie's room, and Murphy was found in Kaylee's room. So the Murphy ended up he belonged to Kaylee and her ex-boyfriend Jack Decor. And according to the affidavit, it adds that Decor told police that he and Kaylee shared the dog. And you'll remember those 10 phone calls made by Maddie and Kaylee to Jack Decor leading up to all of this. So when police entered, the officer said they could see 2 females in the single bed in the room. And this photograph is one of the pictures that Kaylee posted on her Instagram at 8 p.m. And we know, and I showed you credible journalistic sources that were stating, and those sources vet the information that they're given. They stated that Kaylee uploaded this onto her Instagram account around 8 p.m. on November 12th, just hours before this, and that BK, both Kaylee's parents, Christy and Steve, and an informant inside the police department have both said that BK was following Kaylee and Maddie on Instagram. I don't know if he was following Xana. I have not heard anything. If I learn anything, I will let you know. They found a tan leather sheath lying on the bed next to Maddie Mogan's right side. So there's been a lot of confusion. Was it to her right side? Was it underneath? It was underneath and to the right side of Maddie, according to the information that I've been able to get. It had the K-bar USMC, United States Marine Corps Eagle Globe. And my understanding is that law enforcement, that this knife was ordered by BK in 2022 prior to this occurring. They have been able to prove that he did order this knife, this particular K-bar knife. Male DNA was left on that button snap, according to the affidavit, and I just shared with you a few moments ago of how they were able to link that DNA to BK's father, and then ultimately get that cheek swab once they had BK under arrest, get the cheek swab, and they linked that DNA directly to BK. So let's go back to Sigma Chi. What was going on? These young people should have been safe, right? I think that's one of the reasons that this case has garnered so much attention. They were doing everything right. They were out in pairs, right? They say go in pairs, stay together, don't go off alone, like in the Kylie Rodney case where she tried to drive herself home alone. Stay in pairs. They stayed in pairs. Ethan and Xana were together. Kaylee and Maddie were together, and they were in pairs at the time that this occurred. They should have been safe inside their own home, but they weren't. So on the evening of November 12th, Xana and Ethan were seen at the Sigma Chi house. They were there from 9 p.m. until 1:45 a.m. And then they returned to the King Road house where Ethan spent the night. He was a guest of Xana's. Kaylee and Maddie, we've all seen the video footage. If you haven't, I have early videos with images of them at the Corner Club from the Corner Club TV cameras that watch the bar. And we've all seen the footage of them walking with John Jack Showalter back to the food truck. So they were at the local bar, the Corner Club in Moscow. They were seen on that video footage between 10 p.m. and 1:30 a.m. when they walked down to the grub truck, according to the affidavit. They received a ride home, and John Jack was watching over the girls until they got into a car. My understanding, it was some kind of an Uber, or maybe not Uber, the company, but some Uber type of transportation. The roommates, this is Dylan and Bethany, told law enforcement that the occupants of the King Road residence were at home by 2 a.m. and asleep, or at least in their rooms, by around 4 a.m. We know that Xana was up. She ordered food, and she got that DoorDash delivery, which is not BK. Law enforcement has confirmed that, and I believe we'll see the DoorDash delivery driver on the stand. All right, let's check in with chat, and then we're gonna talk about Dylan in just a second. Let's check in with the chat, and then we're gonna talk about, Dylan in just a minute because we're gonna get into what she saw and what she heard. So, if you're just joining me, we're talking about the Bryan Kohberger case. We're gonna be talking about the Vans shoe prints. We're also gonna be talking about Officer Brett Payne. And right now we're talking about the affidavit. We're going through the affidavit. And we're talking about Dylan and Bethany. So please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to be airing the entire trial on my channel. I'm going to be streaming it. So if you want to watch it and and chat in the top chat while we're watching the trial, feel free to hit the notification bell. So Mike says she's talking to Jewel. I think he passed Dylan because he wasn't expecting the last two. He was anxious to escape. Yeah, you got to think if he wasn't expecting Xana to be up with that DoorDash, that he may have been caught off guard and just didn't see her. And remember, visual snow has a not complete impairment, but your night vision is not as good if you have visual snow. And we have all of these posts, and profiler John Kelly went through a lot of BK's posts in a series. I think he's 1 through 4 is aired, and part 5 is going to come out next. Very good analysis from a profiler, John Kelly, about BK's posts about his visual snow and what his social media posts say about him. Definitely worth watching. Let me catch up with chat, and then we're gonna talk about Dylan. Anybody said, "I'm just surprised there wasn't loud screaming." Yes, I think a lot of people, are surprised that there wasn't any more noise. So the roommates didn't hear that either. And maybe it was the way the crimes were committed. You gotta think when you have a 7-inch blade, and you think about the diaphragm, the lungs, this area. I'm watching my words. You can see how somebody, if they practiced, you know, they could probably silence someone very, very quickly. Holly says they always had parties at their place, lots of noise, people coming in and out, and they'd been partying. Yes, and the roommates were probably partying too. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they were, out to dinner with their parents. I have no idea, but they could have, we've seen the footage of Kaylee and Maddie, and that grub truck footage, that footage was available. If you guys didn't see my live stream last week, that footage was on Twitch. You could watch the Grub Hub video at home from your living room. So was anybody watching the girls that night from their living room on that and knew they were intoxicated? What do you guys think? I have not heard anything like that. I can't, unfortunately, I can't talk about that um, on YouTube. But if you would like me to make a video on that, I could do that for Patreon. Mandalay says, I agree. CCTV footage. I only wonder if he had a driver drop him off and pick him up. I don't think so because they have that car. So I think they do. In my opinion, this is just my opinion. I do believe, and this is why I love reading your comments. I absolutely love it because you guys, think about stuff I hadn't thought about. Like, I wonder if somebody dropped him off and picked him up. They saw the car circling, they saw the car do a 3-point turn, and they saw the car park. So I'm going to say that they probably have video footage of somebody driving that car. But we don't know for sure. You can sleep through a lot when you get used to the noise. Yeah, and the way that house was set up, it was a add-on, right? The second and third story had an add-on. So the first and second floor were the original. So there would have been an exterior wall between the second and third floor. This is why I think they should not have torn that house down. Mike says their coyote have been a lot of struggling, but I doubt. Yeah, I don't know I don't know what the sounds were, and I think it's okay. Oh, thanks, Olwen. Love you too. You guys are awesome. And it's okay if we have different opinions. I agree with Leslie. It's okay. We don't all have to, we don't all have, hi, Katie, welcome. We don't all have to agree. I think it's okay if we don't agree. As long as people are disagreeing respectfully with each other, I think it's great to have differing viewpoints. That's how we learn. So all opinions are welcome. If you have a different point of view or opinion, just share it in a respectful way. That's all we ask. Holly says, no, we don't have to agree. Chat can agree to disagree. Civil discourse. Exactly. English is very, very level ground here. I value that. Honey Bunny says, I hope the detectives, they didn't, I don't know. I don't think they did. This is what I think happened. This is just now that speculation warning and trigger warning. I think that he planned. I think he dextered out the car. I made videos about how easy that would be, just to wrap the steering wheel with a little plastic thing you can order online and put us in seat and foot area. But I also think this is why that Dickies receipt is in the affidavit, right? Um, I think that it was a jumpsuit that he had on, which is why the knife sheath was not belted onto him. I think it didn't fit around the coveralls that the perpetrator had on. And that's why the knife sheath was probably in his hand and pulled it out and lost it in the struggle. So I think that as he was leaving, and this is why Bethany reports seeing somebody who did not have something on, remember? And Ann Taylor wanted to talk to her. I think that as he was leaving, he would have stripped off everything prior to getting in the car, and he would have had a change of clothes in the car, and he would have put everything into a plastic trash bag and left. And it wasn't until he got home that he looked in that bag and realized he did not have the knife sheath. We will all agree to disagree. Yeah, please. It's okay to have differing viewpoints. There's not going to be a content creator that you're going to 100% agree with everything on, and that's okay. You guys deserve credible information, and that's all I'm trying to do here on this channel, is just provide you guys with information that's, credible. I'm, trying to bring you information that is coming from credible sources. Holly says, yes, he seemed like a very disturbed individual. His statements were bizarre. Yeah, if you haven't seen John Kelly's profiler thing on that, it's really, really, really good. Let me just take one or two more comments. Then I will come back to take some more comments, but I want to get back to the affidavit. Amelia, our head mod, says all civilly expressed opinions and theories are welcome. Yes. Owen believes he is guilty. Do you guys think he's guilty? Let me know. Put a 1 in the chat if you think he did it. Put a 2 in the chat if you think he didn't do it. And put a 3 in the chat if you're on the fence. I just let's do an informal poll. Catherine says there's a lot of footage around the 1122 King Road house that we do not have. I'm sure they can identify the car. Yes. And remember, I just told you those 5 cameras at WSU in and around the university and the Pullman apartment those 5 video footages, that's what they pulled right away. Those were turned over to WSU police, campus police. 5 different footage of that car. So do they have somebody behind the wheel or a tag? I don't know. What do you guys think? It's a debate, share thoughts, ideas, and learn things and offer opinions. None of us know the truth. We don't all have to agree. Thank you. Wise words. And Honey Bunny says, plus seen on camera, going back to I don't know if he was seen on camera, but maybe he was. Probably, right? They probably do have him on camera. But for sure, the phone was pinging. That I for sure know. All right, let's get into this. Let's talk about the roommates. Okay, so we're going to use the roommates' names. They're out there. That's not, but the affidavit identified them with initials. Initially, we thought both of the young women were sleeping downstairs on the first floor. That's what law enforcement said. And I think this is because they hadn't caught the guy. The last thing they wanted this guy to know, this perpetrator to know, was that there was a witness that survived on the second floor that could have seen him. So they put So we found out that Dylan was actually on the second floor. I think it was internet YouTube sleuths that figured it out first before law enforcement announced it. So the surviving roommate, identified only by initials, said she looked out. We know this is Dylan, but did not see anything. According to the affidavit, she opened the door a second time when she heard crying she thought was coming from Xander's room. She heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." So, my thought, I don't know, because Dylan hasn't had a chance to speak for herself, is that she may have thought that Xana and Ethan were having a fight. So Dylan and Bethany, these are this. If you don't know who they are, these are them. They're the two roommates who were in the home when this occurred, and the affidavit only refers to them by their initials. And it says that Dylan saw BK, so she will be an important witness. At 4:17 a.m., a security camera picked up a distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud. This is according to the affidavit, and a dog can be heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17 a.m. Remember, we all speculated at the beginning, why didn't Murphy bark? Well, maybe he was. Maybe he was alerting. And this, if you were in the house and the dog was barking and you had just done this and you encountered Ethan and Xana, you weren't expecting Xana to be up with that DoorDash coming out the door, you might not have seen Dylan either, especially if she was, in a room with just the door open a crack and just kind of frozen there, startled and just looking, and then went by and then she closed the door and locked it. But I don't think her first thought was, "Oh my gosh, all my roommates are no longer or four of my roommates are no longer with me either." But we don't know what she was thinking because we haven't heard from her. So let me know, what do you think about Dylan? Leave me a comment in the comment section below. So Dylan told police she opened her door for a third time. She heard the crying, and this is when she saw the figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the nose and mouth walking toward her. She described the figure as 5'10" or taller. Male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. This says busy in this article, but it was bushy in the affidavit. He walked past her as she stood in frozen shock phase. I've heard lots of people, including my own self, talking about that frozen shock phase. I had Nurse Allison come on to talk about shock. It doesn't last 8 hours, but in rereading this and re-looking at everything, I don't think she was frozen for 8 hours, because she says she locked herself in her room and she went back to bed. So she just saw a strange man in the house, was startled, froze for a second. He went by, left the patio doors. She, saw him leave and locked herself in a room and thought everything was okay. I really don't believe she was just a 19-year-old. I really don't believe. But if you believe something different, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Think about what words you use in the comment section. If you use certain words, just like I don't use them here, then your comment will not make it through the filter. I will never see it. It'll never make it. Nobody will see your comment if you're using. So think about the language that you're using when you're leaving me a comment too. Authorities believe that the crimes occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25. We've actually narrowed it down more because we know now that car, the affidavit said 4 a.m. to 4:25, but we know now that car circled 3 times and did a three-point kind of a turn before parking at 4:04 a.m. So now let's talk about, authorities found a latent shoe print. It showed a diamond pattern similar to the van type of shoe sole just outside Dylan's room, according to the affidavit. All right, let's talk about that shoe print. Let me grab this other one, and I want to share this with you really quick. I have so many packages to get through. Let me just grab this one. And let's talk about that shoe print. And we'll go back to the affidavit in just a second, but let's talk about that shoe print. Okay, so out this Vans. Now, Vans is a very common sneaker. So it may or may not be important. Can you guys see that okay? Yeah. Okay. So but it's interesting. So the affidavit laying out their initial case against BK caused a lot of stir because they talked about this van shoe print. It also revealed that one of the surviving roommates, Dylan, saw BK, allegedly a perpetrator, a man with bushy eyebrows. We don't know if she said it was BK yet. We don't know. Heard noises and explained that the suspect left a knife sheath behind that was underneath and to the side of Maddie that was responsible for providing the DNA that ultimately matched through to BK's father or grandfather. And ultimately, once they got the cheek swab from BK, they were able to match it to BK in octillion percentages, not million, which is one, not billion, which is two, but octillion, which is 8. That's more than there are people on the planet. So, um, social media has been talking about this shoe print. Okay, so this is coming from a Reddit user who claims to have forensic experience in public and private agencies, and they said that this discovery of this Vans shoe print was the quote next big step in the case. They wrote, quote, first and foremost, the affidavit stated DNA from the trash compared to the sheath at the scene was likely a match to BK's dad. Different jurisdictions have different language they're allowed to use for a DNA match. Here they said not being excluded, followed by a statistic of 99.9998% that it matched to BK's dad. This is the language you would expect moving forward with for any DNA analysis. The first step will be obtaining a known reference sample. So then they moved on and got that buccal cheek swab from BK and they compared that directly. The person on Reddit added, I believe they have the full DNA profile from the scene, which isn't always the case with touch DNA. A very amplified analogy is like a social security number. I might have 5 digits of someone's social security, not the full 9, but from this information, I might be able to say we cannot exclude someone if those 5 digits match 9 in the social security. So we know that the DNA did match, and it was in the octillion, so almost more than there are people on the planet. So let's get back to this latent footprint, and then I want to go back to this, read some more of your comments, and we're going to go back to the affidavit. So this Reddit user said the next piece of forensics I think will be examined is the latent shoe print, which was found in the blood. If they find a shoe from the car or Pennsylvania house that has the same class characteristics, a comparison will be made. So, was he wearing these shoes when he committed the crime? Was this just somebody else that was in the house? Or was he wearing these shoes when he went back at 9 a.m. that morning? We know that front door was open. Did he try to go back into the house to find the knife sheath? Did he run and just try to look around really quick to see if he could see it? So he says, if they find a shoe from the car or Pennsylvania house that has the same class characteristics, a comparison will be made. Depending on the wear of the shoe, they may be able to link it. Class characteristics include shoe size, the number. They will look for individual characteristics such as a particular wear pattern, damage that would only be found on the shoes that left the print. It isn't possible, but definitely worth the time. They will also test the blood from the print. So I think this is really interesting. So we don't know what they found with the shoe print. Did it match? Didn't it match? If it didn't match, would Ann Taylor have put that in a motion and told us found a way to tell us, or is she, trying to basically adhere to that gag order? What do you guys think? Let me know. So the Redditor goes on to explain the possibility of BK claiming he was friends with the victim, saying if no other physical evidence is found, and he thinks this is unlikely, and we don't know. Ann Taylor has said that there's no DNA in his car or office or house, she didn't say that there was that's victim DNA. She didn't say there was no other sources of DNA of him in that house. So I don't know. Or any other physical evidence. The shoe print will be important. BK could argue that he was friends with the victim and left his knife sheath before this all happened. Yes, a bit of a stretch, but could cause reasonable doubt. However, if they match the victim DNA to a print left from the suspect's shoe, it places the suspect after the crime scene, after people were already bleeding. I'm watching my words. What do you guys think? Let me grab the next one for you guys. I have 3 more packages plus a video to go through with you guys. All right. So we're going to go back to the affidavit. Let me catch up with chat for a second. I don't want to ignore the chat. And you guys have such good questions. You guys have such good questions. So yeah, all opinions are welcome. Just share them respectfully with each other. Debates are okay. Just, Honey Buddy says, plus seen on camera again going back at 9 a.m. The Joel says, I wonder if there's a physiological report on BK as a child or teenager. I think there would be a lot in his past we really don't know that added to his mental thinking. Well, you know what's so interesting about this is both the defense and the prosecution agreed to seal his medical records. And I'm wondering why. Was there something in his medical records that, would have told us something? Or, is it just nothing to do with the case? It's not relevant. And Holly says that the profilers were spot on with BK, in my opinion. Mike says, yeah, they're going to claim he was just driving, but not in the house, and just a coincidence that the DNA in that house, though that's why they want the DNA thrown out. Yeah, Ann Taylor is really, really working. She's trying to get the grand jury indictment thrown out. She has put in a third motion. This is number 3. You got to think that Judge John Judge is maybe pulling his hair out a little bit, just wondering, like, come on, guys. I've already, twice told you the grand jury indictment's not going anywhere. And she's, keeps putting in asking a different way, coming up with a different reason. The other theory that I heard of how this case could be tried, this was thrown out um, this week, is that they could decide to try each one of these 4 cases separately. They could have 4 separate trials, or maybe do Kaylee and Maddie and Xana and Ethan 2 different trials to make sure they have more than one bite at the apple. I don't know. What do you guys think? Would the prosecution do that? Mandalay says, what I don't understand is if is CCTV footage beforehand, why can't they track the route where the phone was off? Example, Adam Montgomery rented a U-Haul and transported Harmony to Boston. Why can't they track well, I think I think they have. I just don't think we have it. But I think we'll see that. I think they do have I think they'll line up those phone pings. They're not just going to give us phone pings. They're going to line the phone pings up with the vehicle and they're going to show us. That's what I think we're going to see. Claire said early in the investigation, someone posted on a channel that fraternity brothers who live in the frat house must be back by a certain time. So possibly a frat brother did come to locate Ethan. I think you're thinking of Ethan. Yeah. And I think that, he may have had plans with a friend. My understanding was Ethan's friend, if you're wondering what we're talking about, Ethan's friend is the one that found the crime scene, not the 2 roommates. They were still in the rooms. He used one of the roommates to call for help, and someone was unconscious. Now, whether that was a roommate or whether that was someone that was with him, what if, maybe he had a man or a woman, a young man or woman with him that the friends were stopping by. We don't know yet. There's so much we don't know. But we have a lot of the pieces of the puzzle, but we don't have them all yet. Gina says, so you think that he intended on an essay aspect to the crime, that he wanted more interesting contradictions, so we've dropped the incel theory. I have not dropped it. I don't think one rules out the other. I don't think voluntary and involuntary rule out each other. I think he had thoughts. I think he had fantasies. I don't know what he planned. I wasn't in his head, but I think it's possible that he planned to do more. And I think it's okay that your opinion's okay too. It's a great question. Does it rule out the incel theory? I haven't dropped it. I haven't, but maybe somebody else has. Tara says, if they have strong evidence, I could see BK's lawyer trying for a plea deal like what Chris Watts got. Yeah, do you think there'll be a plea deal, you guys? Pharaoh Gamma, hey, good to see you. Says the front license plate of the 2015 Hyundai Elantra was missing the front license plate from Pennsylvania. Yeah, that narrowed it down a lot for law enforcement, didn't it? Anybody thinks he'll take a last minute plea deal? I don't know. I have no idea if he will or won't. I have absolutely no idea. All right, let me and I think you're right. He has nothing to gain from getting on the stand, but he did. But Alex Murdaugh got on the stand, so who knows? Absolutely, who knows? Enja says using a knife is considered very personal. It's called peak, and yes, psychologists say it has undertones. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. All right, let's go through this. Okay. So, a white sedan was found in the review. We're going through the affidavit for those of you just joining us. This is according to the affidavit. A white sedan was found in review of video footage. It did not have a front license plate. The multiple sightings of the vehicle were found in video footage. It made initial 3 passes around the King Road residence. It left the residence at a high rate of speed, around 420, according to the affidavit, and adding that the authorities identified the vehicle as a Hyundai Elantra. They focused on people who possessed a 2011 to 2016 white Hyundai Elantra, according to the affidavit. And I shared with you how they went from 2011 to 2013, then added till 2016, and then narrowed it down to a 2014 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. How they went, I shared that process earlier in this live stream. If you're just joining me, you can back it up and look at it. Police were given access to the video footage. This is Washington State University campus police and Pullman police, adding that the WSU surveillance cameras captured a white sedan at 12:44 a.m. on November 13th. The vehicle was observed on not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 cameras. 5 in the Pullman, Washington, and on WSU cameras around 5:25 a.m. So do you think they got the license plate on one of those 5 cameras? Did they get an image of him driving the car? What do you guys think? We know BK applied to be an intern at the Pullman Police Department. We know he did not get accepted. Is it because he had committed a crime? He stole his sister's cell phone. I'm sure this was not the first thing that his father caught him doing, but his father did turn him in. When he was 19 years old, he had medication habits. We're going to be talking about Officer Brett Payne in just a second, and we're going to be talking about narcissistic information, so please stay with me. So, on November 29th of 2022, the Washington State University officer Curtis Whitman was looking for white Hyundai Elantras. He was just looking for them, and he found one in a parking lot at an apartment complex in Pullman, Washington. This is according to the affidavit. And the car belonged to BK. His physical description was consistent with the description given by Dylan, according to the affidavit. She saw a man who was 5'10" or taller, slim, athletic build but not muscular, wearing all black with a mask with bushy eyebrows. So they knew they knew quite a bit about what he looked like. They knew what kind of car he drove, so they're zoning in. Authorities realized that BK had been detained as part of that traffic stop. That traffic stop that I showed you a couple of months ago on October 21st, where he talked his way out of a ticket. He had pulled up onto a crosswalk. He was also detained in a traffic stop by WSU on October 14th of 2022, driving that white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with the Pennsylvania license plate. So that traffic stop ended up being part of this, where they were able to go back through and find out more. So they're zeroing in. They're zeroing in. On December 13th of 2022, BK's vehicle was captured by a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado. Okay, so and again on December 15th. So now we're out of November, we're into December. So this is so bizarre because I showed you in a prior video on the map the route that the normal route that BK and his dad would have taken from Pullman, Washington to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. It would be kind of like this, right? But BK does one of these. He takes a 9-hour detour. And Michael, his dad, didn't know why they took the detour. He told one person he didn't know why. He told another person maybe it was the weather. But I can see driving an hour out of your way or pulling over for a few hours due to weather. But taking a 9-hour detour, to me, that shows he was paranoid, in my opinion. So on December 13th, they're tracking him. His vehicle was captured by a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado, and again on December 15th by law enforcement in Hancock County, Indiana. His vehicle ended up ultimately at his parents' house. We now know it's his parents' house in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, by December 16th of 2022. So a lot of people have asked in the comment section, why would he have used his own vehicle? He would have been smarter than that. He wouldn't have used his own vehicle. And this is my theory. Tell me what your theory is. My theory is that his choices of not using his own vehicle would have been to rent a vehicle or borrow a vehicle, both which would have been quickly traced back to him. And he would not have been able to meticulously clean that vehicle as many times as he wanted to. So his best bet was to go ahead and kit out the car and Dexter out the car. He knew he was going. This trip was planned. His father told law enforcement that this trip was planned to go back to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. He knew he could change his tags, and that is exactly what he did when he got there. In my opinion, he knew he could change his tags once he got back to Albrightsville. He didn't renew the tags, he changed the tags, which is a lot more expensive, especially for a college student who's just lost his teacher assistant job. So he ends up back in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania by December 16th. And he wrote an essay. This is interesting. I thought this was so interesting. He wrote an essay when he applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. And adding that he wrote that he had an interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies on how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. Remember in the live stream last week, we talked about the cameras at WSU and the fact that WSU's criminology PhD program had access to 5 law enforcement cameras and that room was located on the criminology floor. Did he have access to this room through his own ID or someone else's ID? So he said he's interested in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. And then we know he posted that Reddit survey asking for participation to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision making when committing a crime. That doesn't set off as many alarm bells for me because I think, a criminology student, you would expect them to do a survey. But it does accuse him of stalking. So let's talk about stalking and then I will get back to this affidavit. But let's talk about stalking for a second. So in many cases, when the stalker wants to have a relationship with an acquaintance, and in this case, we know that BK was liking Maddie's photos and messaging at least two of the victims on Instagram. He was following Kaylee and Maddie. This is according to a source, an informant that came forward. And so that informant would have been vetted by the mainstream media, but it's also according to Steve and Christy Gonzalez. So we have multiple sources for this. Um, I don't read my DM messages personally unless someone has let me know ahead of time I should, because most of them are scammers and con artists. So it's unlikely that these girls were reading their DM messages. But and so they probably didn't think about it that they were getting these DM messages. They probably just really weren't even aware of it. But a stalker in his own mind, the perpetrator who did this, whoever did this, would have been probably thinking about the victims and fantasizing about the target, maybe having a relationship, maybe thinking the target was posting pictures specifically for them. And I suspect, and this is my theory, that the fantasy started out as being interested in having a relationship with either Maddie or Kaylee or Xana. That, and I'm leaning more toward Maddie, but I'm not ruling out the other two. But that he was interested initially in having a relationship. But then ultimately, when he wasn't able to get any traction, when he wasn't able to get attention, when he's being told that he's grading female students differently from male students, and he's being told that he's, quote, failing by his professors, I think ultimately he became angry and hateful. And stalkers also often have a history of failed relationships or difficulty in communicating with other people. And we know from reading BK's post on Visual Snow that he described himself as what? A sack of meat. And he described viewing other people as sacks of meat. So he's not only devaluing himself, but he's devaluing other people. It's almost dehumanizing, in my opinion. And we're going to finish going through Exhibit A and the affidavit together and discuss Officer Brett Payne in just a second. So please stay with me. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about Dylan in just a moment. But I just want to go into the stalking a little bit so we can try to understand this, and then we're going to go back to that affidavit. So most stalkers are very intelligent. They'll carefully plan out their stalking tactics. And in this case, we believe that he was sitting up in that apartment complex located behind the 1122 King Road house, peeping down into the windows. Remember, Maddie's bedroom had her little pink boots in the windowsill and the letter M. It would have been very easy to know which room belonged to Maddie. We know already that BK, we're told that law enforcement believes that he tended and befriended a young woman in Pullman, Washington. Law enforcement believe that BK broke into her house and staged a break-in. When she saw that her house had been broken into, her brand new friend BK offered to help by installing security cameras for her. In doing so, he got her Wi-Fi password, and law enforcement believes that he used these same security cameras that he installed along with her Wi-Fi password to spy on her, to stalk her, to on her. And so, as I shared with you, I believe it's possible that he was also using police body cam and dash cam footage to spy on people. We know WSU had that CSI room that had access to 5 different law enforcement agencies. If you had a propensity to want to peep and stalk, that would be such a great way to feel powerful. So what would have compelled this perpetrator to ultimately turn on their love interest? Because I do believe it was probably started out as a liking, a desire to have a relationship. Well, stalkers become obsessed and ultimately vengeful when they're not getting a response. Remember, Christy Gonzalez told Peter Van Zant that BK, when she went through Maddie's photos, it was like he was liking all of her photos. So this extreme flipping of behavior can happen very quickly. And remember, BK was being told by his professor that he was failing to meet faculty's expectations. So this would have enraged him. He was being told that he was grading female students differently than male students. So he would have felt powerless. And stalking and peeping on this young woman in Pullman, Washington, that he allegedly, according to the law enforcement, peeped and stalked on her. This would have given him a sense of power and control and domination over other people. So let's go back to the affidavit. Let me catch up with the chat too. I'm like so behind. Let me see. George says, unfortunately, there are many creators out there spreading baseless conspiracy theory garbage. I feel awful for the roommates. They're clearly innocent survivors, in my opinion. Yeah, I think we should just give them the same, just give them grace. Let's give them a chance to have their say. I think it's classy that they haven't sold their stories. That, I think it's that it shows that they're trying to protect the integrity of the investigation. But let's see what they have to say before we throw them to the wolves. Claire says, early on in an investigation, someone on a channel posted that frat brothers living in a frat house must be home by certain time. So maybe that frat brother did come to locate Ethan. Wow, this is why I love reading your comments, you guys. I did not know this. This is so interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Claire. Love you too, Holly. And Catherine says, I agree that there are not, there are I'm not sure, a lot of different profiles and psychologists who have weighed in on his personality traits. All agree he fits the bill for being capable. Olwyn is saying this might have been part of his OCD. And I think he's talking about the gloves. I am like super behind on the chat. Let me just go forward here. Yusaki says, whoever the target was, wouldn't it make more sense to get them when they're alone and not at the house with 5 other people? Yeah, it would. It would. Great question. Great comment. Yeah, why did he pick that location? Because it would have been easy for him to approach somebody in a parking lot or approach somebody at the University of Idaho. Why did he choose that location? And that's why I am going with that SA, some type of gratification theory. I don't know for sure. That's just a theory. It's just speculation, but that's why I think that why he would have gone to the house. And I think finding both the girls together in the room, I think this is, threw him for a loop. I think he knew probably that Kaylee was back there. Maybe he didn't, but I think he did know. But I don't know if he was expecting the girls to be in the bed, in the room together. So yeah, that's a great point. This is why I love reading your comments and your questions, you guys. Honeybay says the fact that he went straight to Maddie's bedroom, I think Maddie was his target. He just didn't expect to find Kaylee in her bed. Yeah, that would have been a huge shock. And that may be why that knife sheath came off. I think he had it in his hand. I think he was carrying it and he pulled it and it came off in the struggle and he just didn't realize it. He comes downstairs and all of a sudden Xana's awake with her DoorDash. That food bag made its way from her bedroom where she was eating it back into the kitchen, or did she come out to the kitchen to eat the food and then run back toward her bedroom? And that's what woke up Ethan. I mean, there's so much we still don't know. But great comments, you guys. Mandeli says, yeah, Mike, I'm curious why he left 1122 after he left 1122 and before he got back to WSU. And Catherine says, in my opinion, BK stalked the house and entered maybe more than once. Please excuse my typos. Oh, I'm not judging your typos, guys. Mike says, that's where Jessica might have a point about the essay have been intended. Yeah, I think that's why I feel that way about that, is the fact that he did choose that location. Because whenever we're investigating crimes like this, we want to know why, because in understanding why, we can understand who. But not just why, but why certain choices were made. Why a knife and not a gun? Why inside the house and not what would be so much easier to do it, on the college campus, just walk by, right? Just you have your knife, just walk by. Or a gun, you could do it from a distance. Why were these choices made? Why was the choice made to do this at the 1122 King Road house. And I think there was going to be some type of SA. That's just my opinion. And Mike said, yeah, he drove a long isolated road back home before turning the phone back home. Yeah, he made a big detour heading back from the 1122 King Road house back to Pullman. And Jazz says, I think his long ride home stopped somewhere and he buried the weapon and the clothes. Wow. Great theory. Really good theory. Could be. And I think it was Annie Elise said he went to a big national park the next day. He was like, his phone was off and he was disappeared. But I haven't gotten any confirmation outside of that for that. So I'm bringing it to you with that caveat. Welcome, Native American, for becoming a channel member of Reporter Room. If you see the blue check marks in the chat, those are our channel members. And we would love to have you. Please give us a thumbs up and help me out with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Let's go back to the affidavit, and then I'm going to do some more comments. But I do want to, we have so much to get through. I still have three more packages after this to share with you. Three more packages to get through. Okay, so moving on to December 23rd. This is according to the affidavit. For those of you just joining me, we're going through the affidavit. Officers obtained a search warrant for Kohberger's cell phone records on December 23rd of 2022. And at 12:47 a.m. on the day that these four young people were done away with, the records show the phone left BK's residence. So he left at 2:47 a.m. That's what the phone records show. So did he go somewhere and kid out the car? And the affidavit says that the phone then stopped reporting to the network before being picked up again at 4:48 on Highway 95 south of Moscow, Idaho. So he was then making a beeline back to Pullman. So it was switched off from 2:47 until 4:48 during the time that I believe that the car was dextered out and the crimes were committed. In my opinion. Between 4:40 a.m. and 5:26 a.m., the phone traveled south to Genesee, Idaho, and then toward Uniontown, Idaho, before heading back to Pullman, said the affidavit, adding that the phone arrived back at BK's residence at 5:30 a.m. So he was making a detour. He detoured. He didn't go directly from 1122 King Road back to Pullman. He was trying to probably make a detour, take some of the heat off him. Again, people have asked, why did he drive his own car? Because his only other options would be to borrow a car or to rent a car, both which would have been traced back to him. And police, when they were surveilling him at his Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home, they saw him in the middle of the night wearing his medical examiner gloves out meticulously cleaning that Hyundai Elantra. I wonder how many times that car got meticulously cleaned and that was, more than a month after the crimes were committed. So police believe BK was the driver of the white Hyundai seen on the video footage, according to the affidavit. Police obtained cell phone records, and we're going to be talking about the officer in just a minute. And we're going to be talking more about Dylan in just a second, so please stay with me. But the police obtained cell phone records for BK's phone dating back to June. They went all the way back to June of 2022, and they discovered the phone was in the area of the King Drive residence at least 12 occasions, mostly late in the evening and early morning hours. So my question has always been, did these long drives, because Ann Taylor, I think, was forced to put him in the car. She was forced to say he took long drives. Did these long drives that BK liked to take, did they continue after November 13th? And did they continue when he returned to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and had changed the tags on his car? Or did the long drives stop? I think the jury is going to want to know that. I want to know that. On November 13th, so now we're going back to the day of, Kohberger was seen at Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand in Clarkston, Washington at around 12:46 p.m. He was seen in the area of Albertson's grocery store. So I think that's really, really interesting. And we already know that agents in Pennsylvania recovered the trash from the Kohberger family house in Albrightsville. They sent it to the Idaho State Lab for testing. We know that the DNA profile from the trash matched, and it was identified as being either a father or grandfather to the perpetrator. It matched to Michael Kohberger. All right, let me grab the next one. I want to talk about why women are so attracted to these guys. So let me grab this. Let's see. All right. So, oh, I grabbed the wrong one. Okay. Well, we can do this one first. So, how to identify a gaslighting narcissistic person? Um, I do want to go through this, but I want to go through the other one first. Really do, because it all goes together. You'll see why in just a second. Let me grab this one. Oh, and I have a video to show you too.
Young male, somebody who could get into the house and get out in that neighborhood without being seen.
Someone who knew the victim or victims, knew the layout of the house, knew how to get entry into the house. There was no indication of forced entry. No.
I don't think it was two people, because the more people you had going into that house, the more likely that it is that they were going to be seen. So I think it's one male, young enough to have been in that neighborhood.
He had to be somewhat confident.
This is
No, I
Reporter Room
don't.
with
Maybe
Jessica Della
connection
Davies.
issues. We're going to talk about stalking behavior by Bryan. So let's talk about stalking. And then we're going to talk about the Vans, shoe print, and Officer Brett Payne in just a moment. So please stay with me. Subscribe if you haven't already. Being aware of stalking behavior may save your life or the life of someone you know. So when a stalker picks his or her target, it's often someone who was in a past relationship with this person. That is not the case here. At first, when someone is stalking someone else, their conduct can seem somewhat normal and may not initially set off any type of alarms or raise any red flags, and the stalker might reach out several times giving unwanted attention. And we've heard about the DMs that Bryan allegedly sent on Instagram to either Xana, Maddie, or Kaylee. Now, Bryan is innocent until proven guilty, and he has not had his day in court yet. But initially, the stalker will seem pretty normal. But then it begins to escalate. Now, a lot of stalkers will spend several months online looking up any and all information that they can find on their person that they're fixated on. And after that, this person may move on to DMs. And this is where we do know about Bryan. Now, will we find out from the computer tower that was removed from Bryan's apartment? Will we find out that he was indeed looking up either Kaylee, Maddie, and or Xana? So yeah, why do people stalk? Each type of stalker is seeking something specific from the person that they're watching. There are 5 types of stalkers, and let's see which one Bryan falls under. There's the rejected stalker. We're going to go through the stalkers in just a second, but this is such a great question. I want to share it. Angela is asking why Xana's dad, who had recently changed the locks on her door, why didn't she have it locked that night? Well, she had that DoorDash delivery, Angela. That's such a great question, because she had the DoorDash delivery. Somebody brought that bag with the DoorDash food and put it onto the kitchen table, right? We've all seen that photo. So that's my opinion on that. What do you guys think? Why do you think she didn't have her door locked? So you guys have the best questions. You really do. All right, let's continue on about the stalking, because I think understanding this behavior, understanding why, will help us understand why certain choices were made. Why the 1122 King Road house? Why a knife instead of some other way to do it? Why were certain choices made? Would have had a relationship with someone. That is not the case here. There's the resentful stalker. Again, there's no relationship, so nothing to get involved with here. There's the intimacy seeker. This is a maybe. He could have been seeking intimacy. And then there's the incompetent suitor. Now, this person is generally harmless, so I don't think this is the case. And then the fifth one is the predatory stalker, and I believe that Bryan falls under the predatory stalker type. And this is why. And tell me what you think in the comment section below. This type of person does not usually know the victim. They follow with an intent to physically harm and essay the victim. In fact, they're motivated by essay. Now, I know I'm going to get comments that Bryan didn't essay anyone. And again, he's innocent until proven guilty. But this is true. But there were things going on that night that whoever broke into the house, and I'm just going to say Bryan because he's been indicted, didn't expect. One was that Ethan was spending the night. Two, Kaylee was not supposed to be there. She had come into town with Murphy to visit. Three was that DoorDash delivery that occurred around 4 a.m. for Xana. So I think he may have been surprised and taken back at what happened, and this may have caught him off guard. The reason I believe Bryan is a predatory stalker is because he didn't make himself known. He didn't call excessively or leave notes that we know of. And when this type of stalker is following a victim, they usually don't make themselves known. What do you guys think? Officer Brett Payne and his experience is being questioned, and I expect that BK's defense team will bring this up during the trial. Now, we're not sure how long he was employed by the Moscow PD prior to November 13th of 2022, but it looks like he was on the force and that he was hired in April of 2020, so maybe around 2 years. Moscow, Idaho has never had a crime like this one. In fact, a crime like this, I'm watching my words, where someone was done away with, had not been committed in Moscow in over 8 years. So, all right, so let's talk about this because I do want to grab this and talk about Officer Brett Payne. Can you guys see that? Nope. Hold on. I grabbed the wrong thing. Let me try one more time. Sorry, guys. All right, so this is on Reddit. So I'm just going to give you with the caveat that this is just Reddit. This is not what I would consider a journalistic source. To me, a journalistic source would be, something that tells me that they actually have vetted the source. So this is not vetted information. So this name should be very familiar with anybody. And so there, have been some questions about his police credentials and the fact that he does have prior military experience. He was, from my understanding, around 4 years of experience, and he'd been with the Moscow PD around 2 years at the time of this. So to me, I think for what the Moscow PD needs, I think this is okay. I don't have a big problem with his experience level. And the reason for that is that he did not have to, um, solve any big cases. And when something did come up, what did he do? He brought in the Idaho State Police and he brought in the FBI, who came in with 30 agents. So I think it's okay that, that not every police department, especially a small, quiet town that didn't have anything like this happen for 8 years, not every police department is going to have, massive credentials, um, you know, detectives. So I don't see this as a big problem. I do expect the defense team to bring it up, though, because if I were Ann Taylor, I would be bringing it up. But but I don't think it's that big of a deal, in my opinion. Let's see. Cash Grass says, we believe that there were two different but same looking Elantras. DM's friend Riley had a white Elantra that she sold right around that time. Did they look into that? We don't know. But I did go step by step onto how they zeroed in on this one. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, there's lots of Hyundai Elantras. I don't know if there were as many Hyundai Elantras that were missing the front license plate. I think that helped narrow it down a little bit. So, and then the DNA did match. So I don't know. Great question. But I don't think that just because somebody had a Hyundai Elantra means that they, did or didn't do it. I think there has to be more than just that. Amelia says, I wonder if Bryan has like-minded friends in the surrounding area, a reason excuse to be in the vicinity prior to the crime event scoping. I don't know if he had. My feeling is that he didn't have really a lot of friends, period. Even the ones that did come out and talk about him, seemed like they knew him more peripherally than they did, um, very well. And we know that his dad had to ask one of the neighbors when he moved Bryan Kohberger into the Pullman, Washington apartment, would they be friends with his son? And the blood on the pillow could be from his wrist. I don't know. We know that there was red stains on the pillowcases, right? We saw that, but we don't know anything more about it beyond that. We all have differing views because they are keeping the facts from us. Right, the gag order. Yeah, I wish they would just let it all come out, Crafts and Crime. So I did a poll. If you thought he did it, you put a 1. If you thought he didn't do it, you put a 2. If you were on the fence, you put a 3. And here are the results of that poll. Mike thinks they have 12 cameras to have him. Wow. Kraft says, I don't see how you can say if he is or not. We haven't seen any evidence yet. Well, these people can still share their opinions. You can still discuss the case. And we have some evidence. We just went through the affidavit. So we don't have all the evidence. That's what we don't have. We have, the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion. But we have some. Denise says, from what I've understood, his own sister doesn't like him much. I don't know if she likes him or doesn't like him. I don't know. I know she, you know, allegedly said that she asked him if he did it. He's in camera at Albertsons in the same car. Yeah, he's in the same car. They had 2 traffic stops they were matching that car up with. So that's what I'm like curious to see when they go to trial. Is there going to be something definitive that marks that car as his Hyundai Elantra? What do you guys think? Oh, and we all love you, Jessica. The agree to disagree was us here in Reporter Room having a bit of fun. Oh, thanks, Olwen. You're the best. I got a 1. 0 says, and there was blood on the paperwork on the ground, so it could be his or where the Elantra was parked. I have not heard about that. I would love to know more. If you want to leave me a comment in the comment section below, I would love to know more. Sakiwi says, what was suspect vehicle 2 compared to vehicle 1? I haven't heard anything about a suspect vehicle 2. Not from a credible source. I've heard people speculating online, but that's not the same as a source that's vetting out who's coming forward with the information. Hi, Mamie. Good to see you. Glad you're here. Tara says, I really think he did this. I'm watching my words. I am not sure if they have enough evidence to prove it. Yeah, they might not. Look at Casey Anthony and O.J. Simpson. A lot of people thought they did it too, and they both got off. Amelia says, Bryan is profiled to have incel acquaintances. You're right. Friends may not be the appropriate. Oh, is that what you're talking about? I must have missed the chat conversation. Oh, very interesting. I don't know if he had, they did grab his computer tower. So was he communicating with other people in the incel community? And to be clear, most people who are involuntarily or voluntarily celibate don't bother anybody. They're just good and decent people living their lives. But there is this faction, kind of this extremist group that, really is misogynistic, really does not like women. They refer to women as Stacy's and the guys as Chads, as a way to kind of dehumanize people. And the fact that he was talking about people as sacks of meat and describing himself as a sack of meat is, also very concerning. Catherine says, after the arrest, the survivors might have recognized him. The gag order took effect at that moment. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. But I do give, props to the roommates for not selling their interviews or selling their stories. Zero says, if I thought there was a couple's argument, I would figure it wasn't any of my business. Yeah, I think a lot of people, if they thought their roommate was fighting with that's why I'm thinking when Dylan was in the room and she, heard somebody crying, if you just thought your roommate was having an argument with her boyfriend, you wouldn't go in and be like, any chance I can get involved in this argument? Do you want me to be, you would let them have their privacy. Couples have little arguments. It's normal. Tell us, this police off the cuff channel says called someone's theory a conspiracy. That says to me he is, oh, I don't want to bash other channels. I don't know that channel. I don't know, but let's not do that. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't send any negativity to anyone. Don't go after anybody particular's channel, please, guys. There's drama channels that handle all of that for us in the true crime community. And I, let them handle that. Rebecca says, frozen shock phase is not something that a 19-year-old would say. It's not something that most people would say. Well, I think I could see somebody trying to describe freezing, in that way, using that verbiage, just not knowing quite how to describe what she was going through. So I don't know. I'm on the fence about that. I do think she said it. I don't think law enforcement's lying to us in the affidavit. Well, I don't know. What do you think, Rebecca? Do you think it's not something most people would say, but do you think it's possible that she did say that? I don't know. What do you guys think? Well, I think we're going to leave it there. If you haven't subscribed, and I didn't even get to everything, I have 2 more packages. So we'll do that on the next one. I'm doing Alex Murdaugh on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I'm doing the Alex Murdaugh case. You'll definitely want to be part of that. Thank you to our channel members and to our subscribers and to our mods. Without you guys, we would not have a channel. And if you want to be a channel member and have a blue check mark next to your name, or a red check mark, or a green check mark, depending on how long you've been a channel member, you can subscribe to Reporter Room and your comments will show up like that. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. And I will see you guys Wednesday for the Alex Murdaugh, and we'll finish the Bryan Kohberger also on Wednesday. So Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Alex Murdaugh and Bryan Kohberger. See you then. Love you and